Please tell me your full name and when and where you were born.
Henry Dewayne Rudder, March 7th, 1968, in Corbin, Kentucky.
Do you have any family members that are serving or have served in the military?
Yes, I have an uncle that was in the Army during Vietnam, another uncle that was in the Navy, and a great uncle that was a Marine, and various cousins that are in the military right now.
What were you doing before you entered the military?
Nothing productive. So I was actually taking some college courses, really. Just living here in London.
What motivated you to join the military?
Lots of things. I was very idealistic as a kid, still am to a degree, I guess. We had the bicentennial 76. I remember that. I was always big into politics and current events, and the Marine Corps interested me. My best friend was in the Marines at that time. He joined right after graduation and went to the Marine Corps. So I went a little bit later.
What happened when you departed for boot camp and during early days of training?
Well, I got on the bus. It was a shuttle bus at Carnaby Square. My mom and my sister were there. Mom cried. I didn't understand, but she was crying. And then we went on to boot camp, and then the rest was history.
Do you have any memories of your instructors you would like to share?
Yes, I had my Marine Corps picture. The photograph, if you ever see that picture, it's kind of like your senior high school picture. You go in, you put your dress blue top on, you still have your cami bottoms, you put the cover on, get one that fits you, and you're standing there and you're getting your picture taken, and that's going to be the picture that you have for the rest of your life. That's the boot camp picture. So I had a bad habit of smiling all the time. And we had this hardcore infantry drill instructor. He was second in command. He was always in my face. He said, "No, you're infantry. You won't make it. You're scum." He's always back and forth. "Wipe that smile off your face, recruit. You stinking punk." And just some other choice words. And he's always getting after me about smiling. So one day, that day we were getting our photos made, he comes up, slaps me in the back of the head. He said, "Stand at attention, recruit." Stood at attention. He said, "Are you going to smile in this picture?" "Sir, no, sir." "I don't believe you." "Sir, no, sir. This recruit will not smile in that picture, sir." "All right, we're going to make sure. Go out to the sand pit." He makes me dig in the sand pit. You're getting sand in your ears, all over. You're doing calisthenics, and you're doing it too slow. You need to do it again. Back to mountain climbers. You're doing it too slow. And finally, he lets me stop, stand at attention, and he said, "If you smile in this picture, I'm going to come in at night and I'm going to choke the life out of you. Do you understand me?" "Yes, sir." "Yes, sir." Had no reason to doubt him. Whatever. So I go in and I took the picture, came back out, and that picture for the rest of my mom's life, she'd always say, "Why were you so mad in that picture?" And I wouldn't tell Mom because Mom was always protective of her baby. So finally one day, years later, I did tell her why. And she got really mad at the drill instructor. She was furious. I'm like, "Mom, that was 20 plus years ago. Well, what's the big deal?" That wasn't right. That's boot camp. That's what I signed up for. The intensity. And that's how we did things. I remember getting a letter one day from my best friend. I'll never forget that day. His name's Corporal Shannon Harville. He was corporal at the time, Shannon Harville. I get a letter, and when you go mail call, they'll call your name. If the person was not in the platoon anymore, say they dropped out, they hurt themselves, whatever, they would call their name. We had to say dead sir, dead sir. That's how we talked about it. So they're keeping that in your mind that when people go, they're dead. They're dead to you. So he called my name. I ran and reported to him. Just, sir, recruit Rudder reporting as ordered, sir. He's holding that letter, and you had to take, when they held the letter out, you had to snap it out of their hands, in your hands. You had like a clap and pull it back to you. So I did that, and he pulls it back, and I'm just like, okay, what's going on? He said, who's Corporal Shannon Harville? I said, this recruit's best friend, sir. Oh, you think you're special because you got a Marine buddy out there. What's he do? What's his MOS? I said, he's admin, sir. Oh, he's a stinking POG. POG is people other than grunt. So, yes, you're a Marine, but if you're not infantry, you're a POG. Anybody else is a POG. That's just the way we saw it. And I said, sir, no, sir. He's a great guy. And we're back and forth. And finally, he hands it to me again, and I start to snap. He's like, oh, what is this? What is this on the back of this letter? And my friend wrote, P.S., why did you say all those awful things about your drill instructor in your last letter? And I'm on the quarterdeck. He's got me on the quarterdeck doing mountain climbers, jumping jack. I mean, just if I could have gotten a hold of him at that moment, I would have choked the life out of him. I was so stinking ticked. But that was the way boot camp was. Everything was designed to break you and build you. Take all the civilian out of you, put the Marine Corps in you. My first day in formation. We're standing there. Platoon sergeant, I'll never forget his name, Staff Sergeant Rodriguez. He starts the formation off with, there'll be no chewing of tobacco products in my formation. So everybody stood there waiting for somebody to spit it out. What are they going to do? Nobody did anything. And he repeated himself a little louder this time. He said, I said there will be no tobacco products being chewed in my formation. Everybody's looking, I'm like, well, that guy, he's going to get in trouble. If he's not going to spit it out, something's coming down. So then he got real mad and he started breaking ranks. And to break ranks, it has to be a reason. So he broke ranks. Somebody was disobeying a direct order and he was going to get justice on them. And he just stood square in my face. He said, did you not hear what I said, Marine? And it didn't click with me. I said, yeah, Staff Sergeant, I heard you. But apparently the guy chewing tobacco didn't, because he still got it in his mouth. And he says, spit the tobacco out, Marine. I said, spit it out now. I went, Staff Sergeant, I don't chew tobacco. I don't. I have to open my mouth, let him look in. He's checking my cargo pockets, every pocket I had to make sure I didn't have any tobacco. And he gave the phrase that every senior officer or NCO, non-commissioned officer, would give a troop, as you were. That was apologizing without saying, I'm sorry. So as you were. Goes on back, goes from there. When you graduated, the day before graduation, you had all day with your family if they came. The day before that, you had 4 hours with your family. Well, the day before that, my family came to Paris Island. They got on base, and they're walking around, and some drill instructor asked, who are you here to see? And they told him the name. Oh, he's in this platoon. Yes, I know him. We'll go, I'll send somebody after him, and, we'll get him out here. It's like, well, it won't get him in trouble, will it? No, he won't get in trouble. So I hear my name called. It's like the senior drill instructor, Rudder. You go, sir, recruit Rudder reporting as ordered, sir. He said, your stinking family's out front. You go see them. And when you get back to the squad bay, you come see me. I'm like, oh God, I'm in trouble. He's mad. I mean, this is a couple of days before graduation. I was about off this island, but I'm going to get in trouble for this. So I go outside. It's my mom, my dad, my youngest brother, And my mom's got this smile. I hadn't seen her in so long. And she has this smile on her face. And as I was walking towards her, and suddenly the smile went away. And the first words that she said to me is, "You smell." I'm stunned. I was like, they didn't dry our camis, and they just smelled moldy and mildewy. We didn't know because everybody smelled the same, because anytime that you had family there for a graduation before you, and you see the girlfriends, the wives, the mothers, sisters, whatever, they're walking by you, the perfume would hit you and you could smell it. It was so awesome. So I know we smelled bad. That's just the way it was. We just didn't notice it. So I go back, finish chow, go back to the squad bay. We make a head call. That's the bathroom call, and he called it short. So calling it short is tough, because if you didn't get your business done, completed, oh well, that's just the way it is. They start out, you got 10, nine, and by the time you got to 1, you better be online. So they're trying to finish up. It's a cattle trough. People using the bathroom on each other, trying to get everything done. And I get online, where everybody's online, and he says, "Come on out here, boy." I hesitated. I was praying that he was getting after somebody else and not me. He said, "Don't make me call you twice." And so I go out and I report to him, and he just looked at me. He said, "Was it worth it?" And I knew what he was talking about. I said, "Sir, yes, sir. It was worth it." He said, "We're about to find out." And so he got me in the top of the push-up position. And he said, "Guess what, ladies? The hollers of Kentucky dried up and the Rudders came to South Carolina a little early." So he had everybody laughing at me, making fun while I did push-ups. So anytime I would go up, he'd kick me in the stomach, side stomach, whatever. And about the third kick, he made me stay in the top of the push-up position, which is pretty intense anyway. He got down, he looked at me in the face, he said, "Was it worth it?" I said, "Yes, sir. Sir, yes, sir. It was worth it." He said, "We're going to do this until it's not worth it." And basically what he wanted me to do was break me and say it was not worth seeing my family. And I wasn't giving that satisfaction. I don't care. But I was getting madder by the minute. So I'm doing it. It seemed like forever, but it was probably only about 6 kicks, whatever. And after about the 6th kick, he gets down and he says, "Was it worth it?" And at that time, I was so angry. I wanted him. I wanted a piece of him. So I just looked at him. And you don't look at a drill instructor in the eyes. The first thing they're saying, "Don't eyeball me. Do not eyeball me." And I just looked at him. I said, "I know what you're trying to do, because you didn't refer to yourself in first person. You was always third person. This recruit, you were nothing in the entire time you're in boot camp until they tell you you're a Marine. Then you become somebody again. But at that time, I was still nothing, even though his graduation is a couple of days away." He says, "Oh, so you're an eye now, and you think you can eyeball me?" I said, "Yes, sir. I can eyeball you. I will do that. I know this is going to end sometime. And when I get up out of this, I'm going to kill you." And he just kind of looked at me. He said, "What did you say to me?" I said, "Sir," I said, "I'm going to kill you." He said, "Back online." And I was still harboring that anger, and it bothered me. He came up to me after, after we graduated, became Marines. He comes up, shakes my hand. "Great job, Devil Dog, Semper Fi." Yes, Staff Sergeant. Still mad at the guy. So fast forward 6 months in to when I'm in Cuba, I see the junior drill instructor. He was stationed there as a tanker. And one day we started talking, and he asked me, somehow we got on the subject of boot camp, and he said, "Do you remember that day in boot camp when your parents came down before family day?" I said, "Man, I can't forget that." He kind of laughed. He said, Staff Sergeant Lopez had duty that night. And basically what their duty was, they slept in a rack in the duty hut, and there was no locks on it, no doors, anything like that. So the recruits had to smack on the door, Firewatch had to smack on the door and request permission to enter. He said, "Staff Sergeant Lopez had duty that night, but he made me change with him." "Why'd he do that?" He said, "Well, apparently he said you told him you were going to kill him for what he was doing to you." I said, "Yeah, I did that." He said, "He made me change. He thought you would kill him." It's so, I don't know what I would have done. We'll never know. Now, the food, Marine Corps food sucked. It was just nasty, but, you ate it.
Where did you serve?
When I was at Camp Geiger at Lejeune, I was in advanced infantry training, and we were getting our orders to go wherever we were going to go. We were just being shipped out. So I go to the duty hut, and the orders were posted on. I see my last name, Rudder, Hawaii. I'm stoked. I'm like, yes, I'm going to Hawaii. I have never been to Hawaii. I'm going to go. I'm going to go to the land of milk and honey. It's going to be awesome. That lasted probably about 2 days, and I got caught with the major's daughter. Now, I want to clarify, she was older than me. So, take it as you will. Go back to the duty hut, and the platoon sergeant said, you need to check your orders again because they've changed. I'm like, Guantanamo Bay. Why am I going to Gitmo? What in Cuba? What are you thinking? Why did that happen? And he just looks at me and smiles. He said, well, never get caught with the major's daughter again. You might go to Hawaii, and she might too. So that was an interesting take. So that one thing changed my life for the rest of my life.
Do you remember arriving and what it was like?
All right. I arrived at Guantanamo Bay. All right. It's in the cooler months. It was colder. But in Cuba, it was nice and warm. It was sunny. It was in paradise. It was awesome as far as getting there and the weather. So I go in, I get my gear, and they start talking about banana rats. I'm like, banana rats, what are you talking about? And they said, you'll see. They're nocturnal. You'll see them at night. And it was amazing because I tell everybody, and they can't believe the story, but it would be like a battalion of banana rats online. You'd have 20 here, 30 there, 15 around here. They were everywhere. I mean, they were just invading the base, and they just come around. They never bothered you. You didn't have to worry about them. They never really bit you, but they had banana rat poop everywhere. In the bunkers, anywhere they were, they pooped, just kind of like a rat does. So we were given details to clean up the banana rat poop. And it was before gloves were in use. So your hands picking up the poop, it's whatever. So yes, that was always strange. I didn't like that part of it.
What were your duties?
Rifle Security Company, we stood the fence line. You have, in Cuba, it's kind of a square shape. Everything was on our side. You had towers every so many meters, and you had minefields in between that. So in case the Russian communist invaded, Russia was big in that, and at that time they were pretty big in Cuba as well because they propped them up. So if the Russians and communists invaded, we were there to be able to make a speed bump for them. So we observed, reported any kind of troop movements, anything with communist freighters. They would bring in contraband as they would go through Caminera Bay. They would dock, during the daytime, but they wouldn't unload until nighttime. But they would turn the lights off, so you really couldn't see what they were doing, what they were taking off.
Would you tell me about a couple of your most memorable experiences?
Some of the most memorable were just being on the fence line. We had to do a lot of patrols, even though we had minefields in between. We knew that there were tunnels dug under the base, and they would pop up every now and then. And we just have to go through the mangroves and do patrols just to get them back, especially at night. They were running a lot of patrols at night. We'd have to go out and just make sure that not very many of them came, and then we got them on back. So the towers on the fence line, the towers, the Marines were taken out by Humvee. We had been in the back, and everybody was taken out during their shift, and they would pick up the Marine that was on tower, so you just switch out. You carried your stuff up there, Alice pack, which had a change of camis, camis or your green uniforms, your BDUs as the Army calls it. We had that just in case we had a Cuban citizen that made it across the fence line and got to U.S. soil. We'd throw it down to them so their soldiers wouldn't be able to tell who's a Marine, who's not, in case they got there. So you'd go up on the towers and you can see for miles, miles and miles, miles. And we had what we called ship's big eyes, and they were ship binoculars, and they were huge. I mean, you could see tower to tower. You could see your counterpart Cuban soldier that were on their towers watching for us. And so I'm on tower one day, and I see this Marine, or no, I'm sorry, it's a Cuban soldier. And I'm sitting there watching, and I guess he knew I was watching, because he probably was had seen me, with my ship big eyes. Only the next thing I see is that middle finger sticking up. He's flipping me off. And I'm like, you know what? That jerk. What a jerk. I didn't do anything to him. Yeah, he's a commie. I don't like him, but hey, whatever. So my roommate, he was Puerto Rican. So I go back and I told him the story. He says, all right, when you see anybody on that fence line, here's what you say. And I would say a phrase in Spanish. Get them stirred up. If they were close to that fence line working, I'd shout it out to where they can hear it, and they're just going mad, flipping me off. Whatever they were saying, it wasn't good, and it's probably about my mama. I don't know, but it was pretty wild. I remember one tower specifically. I really liked it. It was a metal tower, and most of them were wood, but this one was a metal tower. And again, you had the bunkers down below, but some Marines, I'm not going to say that I did it. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. We had sandbags all around, in case we were shot at. If you're getting shot at, you want to be behind the sandbags to hopefully stop them, stop the rounds coming into you. And so some Marines kind of move some sandbags around to where you can just kind of recline on that area. You're just sitting up there, just kick back like you're on the block and just having a good time. And it was a Sunday morning. It was probably about 10, 11 o'clock, and the sun was beautiful that day, and the skies were clear. And I'm just sitting there like, oh, this is awesome. And the next thing I know, the tower's shaking. I mean, it starts shaking on me. And I'm like, I jump up, grab my rifle. I'm down looking down below me like there's a bunch of Cuban soldiers down at the base shaking it. And I'm like, what happened? So finally we figured out it was an earthquake. So we were just getting shook. But I laughed at myself because I'm grabbing my weapon thinking that I'm going to look down over that tower and I'm going to be surrounded by Cubans, and I didn't see them coming. So I'm in trouble, and I'm looking in the bunker, trying to see. And that was one of the amazing things that we had to do. It was just, any kind of troop movements. You talk about the troop movements. It was in 88, 89 that I was there. The Soviets were big. It was before the fall of the Berlin Wall. And you had Russian troops that were helping out the Cubans. They would be on the fence line constructing things, and we'd take pictures of it. Some of the Soviet helicopters would fly around the fence line, and they wouldn't face you, so you couldn't see down their missile tubes, see if they had missiles loaded. So they just fly, and you're just sitting there like, if they decide to, you're gone. I mean, your tower's gone, and you're gone too. But they just did it to mess with us, and we did things to mess with them. Our pilots would come in and bank around pretty hard as they flew, and it's like, geez, that was intense. DEFEX was defensive exercises, and basically what they did was they ran crews on the towers for that week, and the Marines that were, and everybody basically participated in this. In case we were invaded by the Russians, the Cubans, any communists that came over, we're going to fight with them. We're going to take up positions, and we're basically a speed bump. We're holding them off until the reactionary force could come from Camp Lejeune, and they would be there within 24 hours. and all the citizens, they would go to the airport. You had to ferry them across, and this is things they had to do. They had to do that in, it's kind of like a fire drill. Let's go, all right, kids, let's go. So they've got their bags packed. They go out. They're gone from base housing, schools stopped, and so I had a bunker that I was manning, and it was just getting so bad. I kind of regret this, but I kind of don't. It was one of those things where I was young and stupid, and Marines, I was not immune to this, and I've, you know, got over it, but we cursed a lot. You cursed a lot. And that helped, I guess, us relieve stress, and that's how we talked. It was just, if you're around civilians and you had sensitive ears, you could not be around Marines because they do all the time. And there was this van going down the road, and I'm looking and I'm watching this guy. I'm just watching the van. I'm like, okay, what's he doing? I'm curious. Next thing I know, he's like, and I'm like, you didn't just do that. And he did it again. I'm like, okay, so my middle finger goes up. It goes up. And he was in the Navy. He was a higher rank. They come stomping up there and fussing and fighting. So I got on the radio and called my platoon sergeant. I said, you need to get over here to this bunker. He came. They start talking about what was going on. They wanted me charged for disrespect, of an NCO and this, that, and the other. And my platoon sergeant looked at me. He said, "Did you do what they say you did?" I said, "Yeah, I did." "Well, I didn't see it happen. So if I didn't see it happen, it didn't happen. You guys go on your way. You get back to your bunker." And he protected me. He protected me. So there were a lot of times that we could have faced serious consequences in the Marine Corps, but it was just a place that they take you and break you down. They make you something different than what you came in there for. So everything is designed in boot camp to, from the first time you step on those yellow footprints, and that's where recruits go to, stand in formation, and you'll see Marines talk about the yellow footprints, and they go through those doors, and they eventually come out Marines. And so everything is for a purpose. So they deprive you of sleep. They're in your face. They're doing this, that, and the other. You get your receiving platoon. You get your head shaved. You get all this paperwork. You sign your will. Write a note to mommy and daddy. Hey, I'm safe. I'm okay. I'm at Parris Island. We're having a great time. And then you go from your receiving platoon to your actual platoon through boot camp. And I knew what was coming because I had my best friend in the world. He had gone before. His brother had gone to boot camp. He was a Marine. And so I knew that, the series chief drill instructor, the series drill instructor was going to come in, and he's going to have these three drill instructors behind him standing there at parade rest, and they're just giving this look. He's telling us, he's telling us all. He said, these Marines, I trust them. I put them in charge of teaching you, making you Marines, showing you what to do. And he's making it sound like it's going to be like June Cleaver just coming out. Hey, no, Marine, you need to do it this way. But I knew that's not what's happening. It's gonna blow up. And I knew there were a lot of people not ready for it. They just weren't. But I was. So I'm just like, bring it. It's gonna be fun. So the next thing you know, the series chief drill instructor says, we had Staff Sergeant Lopez. He was a senior drill instructor. He said, Staff Sergeant Lopez, take charge of your platoon. He goes out, that door slams. They are in our faces, screaming, yelling, throwing things, cursing you. It was just like they were busy bees everywhere. And then through another door, here comes some other drill instructors. They come in and they start in on you. So you're back and forth. It was so intense. If you didn't do certain things as fast as they wanted to, they made you go back and do that again. And it was intense. Boot camp was very intense. Our stories in the Marine Corps, like I said, we're different. We fought a lot. In Cuba, it was isolated duty. You couldn't go into Cuba. You could take military flights, to Jamaica, Hawaii, Aruba, places like that. Places in the Caribbean, you can just $10 flight unless you got bumped by somebody else. So we took a lot of flights, but sometimes you'd get bumped by a colonel's wife or something that wanted to go on vacation. So a lot of times we were there. We were there, and the only thing that you really had to do when you're off duty was drink, PT, or fight. I didn't drink, so that didn't impress me. But I would PT a lot, and my buddies are fighting. I'm in the mix with them. I'm gonna fight with them, and we it got so bad. We were fighting anybody and everybody. It didn't matter. So our company commander said, "Okay, we're going to stop this fighting." And they're trying to take Marines that are being trained to fight and kill and flip that switch and be disciplined enough not to fight anywhere else. And that was a tough thing to do. So he said that, you know, our platoons, RSC Windward was secured to Charlies, and Charlies are your dress green slacks, your core frame shoes, and your brown shirt, with your ranks and things like that. It's more of a somewhat formal dress. Okay. So he said, you're secured to your Charlies anytime you're off duty. Anywhere you go and you're not on duty, you have to wear your Charlies. You can't wear civilian clothes, can't do any of that stuff. So if we went to the beach, we'd have to go in our Charlies. We'd go into the little shower area. We'd change into our swim trunks, put them in a duffel bag, whatever, go out to the beach, hang out there, and go back and change into our Charlies to leave. So everybody knew who we were, rifle security company, and you'd hear people talking, yeah, they got secured to Charlies because they fight all the time. It's like, yeah, we fight all the time. But that's one thing that we really, sometimes I think we took it too far. Some of the fights I look back on as an older man that shouldn't happen, and those were pretty intense times. 6 months in to my stint at Cuba, I was going to the PX. I was on RSC Windward side, and I was leaving the barracks. You had to cross the parade deck to get to the PX, and I was on a run to make get some pop, something, snacks, whatever to take back. As I walk across the parade deck, I see this Marine, and I was suddenly scared. I mean, I didn't get scared of much of anything at that time, but I saw that Marine, and it scared me. And it was my drill instructor from Cuba, from Paris Island. He was a tanker, and I'll never forget him. He was Sergeant Rodriguez, and I just had flashbacks of boot camp, and he was vicious. I mean, just all in your face. I mean, he was a little short guy. So I go to the PX. I didn't say anything to him. I go to the PX. I get back to the barracks, and I tell my buddies, it's like, he's here, And the Marine Corps is a small world. You'll run into people a lot. So we were talking, and they're like, hey, you got an opportunity. You can't pass this by. You got to get him back. You got to pay him back. So we were thinking, what could we do to him? One, do to him and make an impact. And two, not get caught, because he was higher ranking than I was. So we thought, and finally, we had a week on tower and a week in the field. So we were getting ready for maneuvers. He was a tanker. We had tanks on the windward side. And what we did was we had fire watch at night. And fire watch was roving patrols, looking for anything out of the ordinary in case we were attacked, whatever. That's fire watch. They're looking for things. So I figured out, I just kept watching and observing and thinking to myself, I had my plan in my mind. I said, this is how I'm going to do it. So I told my buddies, I said, you guys stay out of it. If I get caught, it's on me. You have nothing to do with it. So it's my deal. But they're like cheering me on that you go, because our mentality, I can't explain the mentality of a Marine. It's different than a civilian. So that's one thing I would tell you. So I kind of timed the fire watch see how long it took them to get back and forth. And I knew his tank. And the tank commander, they could turn that turret a little bit, kind of sleep in there. So he was short. So I figured out which tank he was sleeping in. So, all right. So I crawled, did the low crawl over to his tank, waited for the fire watch to pass by, and I knew I had like about a minute and a half, something like that, to be able to do what I had to do. So I snuck up on the tank. I had a can of tear gas in my hand, pulled that pin out with my mouth, kind of like the heroes in the movies do. Just opened up that hatch, threw it in, closed that hatch, and it was pure torment. I ran and I ran. I was back. I was back to our little sleeping area, and we didn't even put our tents up. We just slept under those rain jackets and stuff. We just didn't have anything. Our pillows were our backpacks, our Alice packs. So that's what we used. But didn't say anything. Next day, nothing was said. Nothing. I'm shocked. I mean, I'm thinking everybody's going to be standing out in formation. They're going to be drilling everybody who did this, what happened, but it didn't come. So I'm like, man, this is strange. Strange. A couple of days later, he came over to me and talked to me. We were off duty, and he said, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, Sergeant, I'm doing good. How you doing?" "I'm doing good." And he said, "I was wondering how long it was going to take you." "Sergeant, what are you talking about?" "How long it was going to take you to do something to me? Because, I was pretty rough on you in boot camp. I was making you a Marine, and usually when I see people I had in boot camp, they try to do something to me, and you actually take the prize for what you did." "Sergeant, I don't know what you're talking about." I never would admit it. I mean, because I was afraid he was setting me up, but that was my revenge on him.
Would you tell me about some of the special people you met?
Some of the special people, obviously my Marine buddies, they were great. And also, during that time, there were Cuban employees on base. They lived in Cuba. They would come through the Northeast Gate. They would work a job at base, and then they'd go back out. One in particular was a great guy. He worked at RPX. Just an awesome man. He was so positive. Even though he lived in a communist country, he was very positive. He was very, very outgoing.
How did you stay in touch with family and friends back home?
Letters, and we also had phones. The satellites would, pick it up. They would send the signal to Florida, and then Florida would go on from there. So we'd call every now and then, but mostly letters because it was really expensive at that time to call.
Tell me about the day your service ended.
It sucked. The day it ended was, you asked about adjusting to the military life. They do an awesome job at making you a Marine, but they do a horrible job at making you a civilian again. And you go through adjustments. It's very intense. You get very confused, but you just have to keep going.
How did you return home?
Airplane. I flew from Washington, D.C., and then on to Kentucky to the airport in Lexington.
How were you received by your family and friends, community?
My mom was happy, obviously. She was all excited. But, everybody knew there was something different when I came home. Even on leave, they know, because you don't get out of boot camp and in the Marine Corps and come out the same way you went in. You're completely different. It's a total shift in your thought process, the way you do things, how you carry yourself. Just everything was completely different.
What did you do after your military service?
After my military service, I went back to Washington, D.C. I worked for United Parcel Service in downtown D.C. as a package driver, and then eventually moved back to Kentucky.
Have you remained in contact with or reunited with fellow veterans?
Some. I was able to track down a couple of the guys from boot camp. One, we were bunkmates. Great guy, lives in South Carolina. I was able to track him down. And also, thanks to Facebook and there's a Marine site that, Facebook page that you put in your platoon and what year you were in. And I had one of the recruits that I was in boot camp with that responded to me, and we talked for a little bit.
Are you a member of any veterans organizations?
No, just on Facebook. Just on Facebook.
How did your military experience affect your life?
It affected it in every way possible. Every way possible, from, like I said earlier, from the way I carried myself. I guess full disclosure, I am a disabled vet, and there are some things that I brought back with me that I still deal with to this day.
What are some life lessons you learned from military experience?
No matter what they do to you, they can't take away your birthday. That just basically means don't let anything bother you. It's in 5-10 years, is it going to matter? Most likely not.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will view this interview?
That there were people from the founding of this country until the time they see this, whenever it may be, past, present, future, people that have given their lives for us to be free. That they should take this opportunity this country's given us and be very respectful, reverent to the opportunities you have, because there are many people out there that don't have the same opportunity we have. You go to a third world country, you'll see it firsthand.
Is there anything you would feel like we haven't discussed or should be added to the interview?
One thing that we haven't discussed was when I was on active duty, I met a girl, fell in love with her, and then she committed suicide. Suicide is a hot topic in the military. People that are getting out, people that are on active duties, it's a stressful life, but that's one thing that has affected me. One of several things, I guess I would say, that affected me the entire time. It's not something you just hear about and say, oh, okay, well, that's too bad. I'm sorry. I hate that happened. You carry a lot of things with you when somebody's close to you takes their own life. My hope is that anybody, whether they be military or not, if they're thinking about it, that they get help. They seek help, because there's no shame in it. Talk to somebody, talk to a professional, talk to anybody.